Right, it's Mark here from Talk Beliefs and NEAL from Reason Now, and we start off with a little bit of sad news. You heard about Stan Lee yesterday, did you, Neil?
Yeah, middle of the night I started getting messages. It was very sad. He was an agnostic, but he very much lived by humanist principles.
Anyone who doesn't know exactly who Stan Lee is, this is the creator of many of Marvel Comics' most beloved characters, the Hulk, Black Panther, I think Captain America as well. And as far as we know, he wasn't really a religious person, and he, like you said, he seemed to believe in humanist values and instill that into some of his books.
I know he's had such an influence on billion people around the world, I would say. All the characters he built, he was fighting for racism in the 60s. Most of his characters have got a lot of empathy about them. Obviously, with great power comes great responsibility.
Yeah. He created the Black Panther, or at least co-created, I think.
Yeah. So he's touched so many people's lives, and famous for his cameos, obviously, in 30-odd films or something.
30-odd films, and I think you said there's a few more in the can, which we have yet to see.
Apparently so.
Yeah.
But yeah, he's going to be missed, but going to be remembered because his films are going to live forever, and his characters are just going to keep on going.
Yeah. And of course, one of his creations was a god, which is Thor. Although Thor does go to great lengths to say, at least in the movie, that, well, no, I'm just a guy with a bit better technology than you guys, yes.
Yeah.
Perceived as a god, shall we say.
So sad news, but he made it to the grand old age of 95 and left us with a ton of memories. Absolutely.
I didn't know he was that old, but good on him for making all those cameos. Yeah, he's influenced a load of people and will continue to do so. Well, we've not been around for a while. Neil, you've been in Germany, and you went to Frankfurt, and something a little bit unusual, it's a little bit weird, happened only minutes after stepping onto the streets of Frankfurt. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, I left the hotel and went for a walk. It was a Saturday morning and wandering around, and within an hour and a half of wandering around Frankfurt, I'd seen at least 10, maybe 12 groups of Jehovah's Witnesses on corners, different groups, not the same
12.
Groups moving around. I had no idea.
I knew you said you saw a lot, but 12 different groups?
10 or 12, and it was... I was just shocked. I thought Germans would be a bit more
as in standing there with their magazines, the carts.
Yeah, exactly the same as they do in the UK, with their carts standing there, with books for all different languages, as they do here. But I just thought Germans would be more rational than to have so many.
Well, even in London, you don't see that many. I mean, maybe now and again you turn a corner and there they are, but...
Shocking. It shocked me. It really did.
I wonder, so if anyone can explain to us why all these JWs are in Frankfurt, perhaps they just gave up on Britain.
Yeah.
It's like Germany now.
Yeah.
And in fact, our first story is about the Jehovah's Witnesses, and yet again, it's not a very pleasant story. I'm sad to say this comes from the BBC Co-UK. Jehovah's Witness elder jailed for child sexual abuse. A Jehovah's Witness elder has been jailed for 5 years for sexually assaulting a terrified schoolgirl. Brian Jenkins, who is now 75, groped the girl when she was aged between 12 and 14, while she was part of his congregation in Brecon Powys, which is in Wales. I'm hoping I pronounced Brecon right. Jenkins from Worcestershire was found guilty of 6 charges of indecent assault dating back to the 1970s at Merthyr Tydfil Crown Court. During a 3-day trial, the court heard that Jenkins had assaulted his victim while on missionary work, at Bible classes, and at swimming lessons at Brecon. So this is sadly not something that is new to us, is it?
No, and anyone who's listened to this show before won't be surprised to hear that the church protected him.
Yeah, that's what this article is about, isn't it? And this is what keeps coming up.
Yeah, the good old 2-witness rule meant that the guy nothing was done about him, and this has taken this long for this poor lady to get justice. She's now 58, and this happened to her when she was 12 and 14. But don't be led into thinking this just is a historic problem in the Jehovah's Witnesses.
This particular one is. It goes on all the time, right up to that. It's happening right now in this country and other countries right now. And despite having been told by authorities, this has got to stop, they basically said publicly, we're not going to stop this because it's based on a rule that we get from the Bible, which they call the two-witness rule, which means they have to have two witnesses to any alleged crime or abuse.
And last time I checked, that in America they're being fined daily by refusing to hand over documents, because they keep registers of all these complaints, but they won't hand them over to the law.
Won't hand them over.
And they're protecting paedophiles and child molesters. And I just can't get my head around why anyone would want to do anything with this organisation. Certainly do not let your children anywhere near the elders. Keep them in your sight, because if there's no safeguarding for children in these organisations, from what we're learning.
The girl, now aged 58, told the jury, "I'm angry at Jehovah's Witnesses elders and the governing body for the lack of protection they provide to children. They do not report it to the authorities because they want to deal with it in-house." Now, we know a lot of ex-Jehovah's Witnesses, and they tell us anything outside their kingdom hall, which is the name of their church, what they call their church, is the world, and anyone in it are worldly people, and you don't deal with them. They're evil. They don't have the truth, capital T. And that includes the authorities, it seems, as well. So we will keep it within our, jurisdiction, what they call elders. An elder is just somebody who's appointed an elder. That's all that means. And beyond that, they leave it in Jehovah's hands.
And when they say deal with it in-house, what they actually mean by deal with it in-house is, well, there weren't two witnesses, so it didn't happen. So go away and stop complaining. That's effectively what they're saying.
Yeah.
So they're not dealing with it at all. And anyway, we live in a world where we have rules and laws, and everyone should be abiding by those laws.
Absolutely. And I think really what's going to happen to the Jehovah's Witnesses in the end, and I was told this by several ex-Jehovah's Witnesses at the protest, the one thing that's going to really be their downfall is the fact that they're hemorrhaging money because of all these lawsuits.
Yeah.
And they're having to pay out. It seems every week you hear about another payout they have to give to a victim of sexual abuse. They had to sell their gigantic headquarters in New York, which of course is prime property in Brooklyn, and now they live in a place called Warwick in upstate New York. And they probably have to sell that eventually.
So I guess my takeaway from this is, if you do know anyone who's a Jehovah's Witness, just tell them to keep their kids safe, because you can't trust the church to protect them.
Didn't you say that once to a Jehovah's Witness in the street?
I do like, actually, now just asking them if they have young children and just saying to them, nudging them, saying, well, just be careful if you heard of all the cases.
Don't be afraid to do that. If they're standing on the street with their cart, with their magazines, just say, I hope you realize what's going on. Please keep your children safe. Yeah. And if they might not even know what you mean.
No, they might not, but hopefully they'll go and search it out. But be polite. Don't need to expand too much, because you just want to get these people thinking about what's actually going on. If they want to engage in discussion, great, but keep it polite.
A lot of them don't know what's going on.
No, they don't. Absolutely.
And they're in the church. Right, we're going to go on to something quite interesting. This is actually another article from a religious site. This is from creation.com. Probably you would have guessed just from that title that this is a religious website. I find these interesting. I subscribe to some of the newsletters just to see what's going on, their take on things. And this is a site which promotes creation and isn't too keen on the science of evolution. And they're certainly not keen on Richard Dawkins either. And the title of this is Richard Dawkins is releasing an atheist children's book. Now that is enough to incite any creationists or Christians in general. Richard Dawkins is making the news again. He has unveiled his plans to publish another book aimed at promoting atheism to children. He has done this before with The Magic of Reality. Descriptions of this book are bizarre, underscoring the puerile, petty, and intentionally blasphemous nature of its contents. It is said to include gory descriptions of biblical sacrifices and even Jesus committing a murder. To anyone remotely educated in the Bible, the question of why Dawkins would even think of depicting the sinless savior of humanity committing murder, beyond the obvious aforementioned desire to commit blasphemy, is a real head-scratcher. I love the way they word this.
Can we tackle a couple of things there?
Yes.
First off,
You're champing at the bit there.
Yeah. Okay, Richard Dawkins. A lot of atheists don't like Richard Dawkins.
No, exactly.
He's controversial because he tells it like it is, and a lot of people don't like that. But
shoots his mouth off sometimes.
Yeah, he does, and he can be very insensitive. But they said the book Magic of Reality is promoting atheism to children. I read the book. it's not. It's a science book put in very plain terms that anyone can understand. And actually, it's a great read, and you can learn a lot from it as an adult.
Yes.
It's a fantastic science book. It doesn't promote atheism in any way, shape, or form. In fact, I think there's only about one chapter that even mentions God or Jesus. The rest is pure science. And when it does mention the Bible, and that, all it is doing is comparing the story of Noah to Gilgamesh. Stuff like that. That's all it's doing. It's not saying, be an atheist. You have to be an atheist. It's not at all.
So many of these Christian activists do actually see it as a promotion of atheism by its very existence.
Yeah.
You know, it's aimed at kids, or young people at least, and it's by an atheist. Therefore, they seem to see it as become an atheist or else.
Yeah, well, they're just wrong. It's a science book.
It could be the subtext of it, maybe.
Maybe that's why he wanted to write it, but I've read it, and it's definitely not what it's doing. Maybe he wanted to bring science to children so he could make more critical thinking. Fantastic, but he's definitely not promoting atheism in it. So now let's take the second bit. Anyone remotely educated with the Bible and the question of why Dawkins would even think of depicting the sinless saviour of humanity committing murder before the obvious aforementioned desire to commit blasphemy is a real head scratcher.
Is it? He's an atheist.
Well, no, because the original texts that were chosen to go into the Bible, when they were making those choices, the infancy gospels existed, and it does tell a story of Jesus murdering.
That's right, when he was only 12 or something, really young.
Yeah.
And what was it? There was a bully that he didn't like.
There was a bully he didn't like, so he killed him, and he did resurrect him. And there was a teacher, he was just boasting to his friends that he could kill people and resurrect them, and they didn't believe him, so he literally just killed his teacher and resurrected him.
As in, it just points a finger at him and zap.
Yeah. So, I'm sorry if this is news to Christians, but before the Romans decided which Gospels went in the Bible in the 3rd century, in 300s, this was accepted by many types of Christians as one of the Gospels.
But somebody along the line said, oh, maybe not.
But the Roman Church thought, doesn't sound too good, we don't want...
I don't know if it's the Council of Nicaea or who did it, but somebody obviously got a bit spooked by this and thought, we're not going to get many followers with this.
Yeah. So
let's leave this out.
Without a doubt, this was one of the original Gospels. I'm not saying any of the Gospels were true, but to say that this story wasn't around, it is completely and utterly misleading. And what is completely disingenuous is that anyone of any level of education in Christianity, or been to seminaries or done anything, would know this is a fact.
Yeah.
So they're being completely disingenuous by saying they don't know.
And notice they didn't mention in the article the actual. We've had to guess that it's this. They haven't mentioned. They just say at one point he says that Jesus committed a murder.
Yeah. Well, he committed 2 murders, so there you go. We can correct him on that one.
And the article goes on to say, this book raises another rather odd question. Why would an atheist bother wasting time writing a book for children about the fact that there is no God in the first place? Why bother spending large quantities of time attempting to proselytize people with this insight that God is not real? Would this not be comparable to someone writing a children's book about how Santa Claus and the Easter Bunny are not real?
Well, the fact of the matter is, he's not wasting his time writing a children's book about the fact that there is no God. What he's going to do, if the evidence from the last book is true, he's actually just going to point out facts to people, and he's going to hopefully get them critically thinking about science. See, he's not...
That's his only agenda, really. His reason in science and evidence.
Yeah, exactly. He's very much of the lines of people can think whatever they want, but let's get to that position by thinking.
And let's face it, nobody's forcing anyone to buy his book.
No.
You know?
It's so funny that they do this. I can't, by a factor, the number of religious books trying to indoctrinate children, by a factor of the number of science books aimed at children, it's just ridiculous how many there are, and they get butthurt that someone wants to write a science book. For God forbid that your child learns to think for itself.
Yeah.
That's what it is, really, isn't it?
And there's no blackmailing and saying, you were born sinless and you've got to get right with this particular deity or else, burn forever. There is none of that implied in what Richard Dawkins is proselytizing.
Yeah, if they want to call it that. And they don't like it because it often leads to people having a more humanistic approach to life and thinking they're not in the right camp, sort of thing.
Yeah. And lastly, we'll just read this part here. Naturally, no book on selling atheism would be complete without a section on evolution, emphasizing once again the fact that evolution is the cornerstone of modern atheism and showing us how vitally important creation apologetics really is in equipping the church to fight back against the secular propaganda. Now, this is a complete tangled mess here, you know. Evolution means atheism, means secularism, it's all propaganda. You're all trying to, you know, stamp out every church in existence and use evolution as a Trojan horse of getting atheism into children's minds. And this is nonsense.
I don't get how a fact is a cornerstone of modern atheism. Evolution is just a fact. It's something that factually happened. It's how we ended up where we are. Nothing more than that. So it says nothing about atheism. It says nothing about God. Who knows? We don't actually know what started off life on Earth and what kicked in the... It could have been a god. I don't think so.
You can believe in a god that kicked everything off and then uses evolution. You could. That's called theistic evolution, that belief.
I don't see any evidence for that, but I actually don't know what started life on Earth.
Yeah.
But to say evolution is a cornerstone of modern atheism is complete and utter nonsense.
They're so scared of evolution. All it is the change of heritable traits over time in species. That's all it is.
Yeah.
And that scares the life out of them. I don't understand it.
I don't understand it. Because if it was... Say they believed that God did it. Wouldn't it be glorious that God led to this stage where through evolution where humans came about? I just don't get the problem with evolution.
Well, that's a point. You know, if evolution was in the Bible, they'd be championing it now, saying, look what he did. Isn't it amazing how he could make all these forms transition into other forms? And they start up on the sea, and then they're on the land, and then some develop wings. And then us with our big brains, you know, creating, you know, hydrogen bombs and all these wonderful things that we've made.
But is it that they're just scared that it shows that the people who wrote the Bible were Bronze Age people who had no scientific knowledge, and they're said to be speaking for God, so God had no knowledge of evolution, he had no knowledge of antibiotics, he had no knowledge of bacteria.
No.
I think they're just...
DNA?
No, is scared. And I definitely come to the conclusion, when they say stuff like this, they are just lying. They are just lying. They know evolution is true, but to keep their tribe together, they have to lie. And their tribe have to lie to prove they're part of that tribe. That's all that's going on here.
And a person who we know well, unfortunately not personally well,
not
who
yet.
is who is definitely a proponent of the this horrible idea of atheism and evolution, is Alice Roberts, who is now the president of Humanists UK.
Yes, we're personal fans of Alice Roberts. If you've never seen any of her programs, check them out. Go online. Fantastic. Evolution, archaeology.
That's right. She's famous for so many different shows. Prehistoric Autopsy is one of my favorites. Digging for Britain is coming up soon. And yeah, it isn't like an honorary role, but she's like very, very happy to have been given this role. And we, of course, interviewed the chief executive of Humanists UK, Andrew Copson. He's really happy about this appointment as well. And the article says, acclaimed science writer, broadcaster, and humanist Alice Roberts has today been named the next president of Humanists UK and will lead a national push to promote humanism to the many millions of people in the UK who hold humanist beliefs but haven't yet heard the term. The anatomist, author, and well-known TV science host will prioritize promoting awareness of humanism to the British public. Now that's different to Richard Dawkins and his aforementioned book. You know, so if she's president of Humanists UK, she is going to promote humanism.
Yeah.
Alice, who has been a patron of Humanists UK for 7 years, will also help steer Humanists UK's national campaign to call into question state funding of religious schools and will campaign for a fair education system with no religious discrimination for millions of UK children. Alice previously helped lead Humanists UK's successful campaign for evolution to be taught in all state schools, but she is concerned that in some schools creationism is still being taught as an alternative and that humanism doesn't feature in most primary school curricula, giving children the strange impression that everyone in Britain adheres to one faith or another.
Hello, my name is Alice Roberts. I'm a scientist, author and broadcaster, and I'm also a humanist. And I'm incredibly proud and honoured that from 2019 I'll be president of Humanists UK. Humanism is really important to me and for many people across the country. It's about how we approach evidence, but it's also about how we treat each other. We like to look at evidence before making our mind up, and we aspire to treat everyone equally, to approach people with warmth, understanding and respect. And we also want to lead happy, moral and ethical lives because we believe this is the one life we have. We're growing all the time, a positive movement for social change. If you're not already a member, please join us at humanist.uk/join. Remember, think for yourself, act for everyone.
On accepting the appointment, Alice Roberts said, "As an anthropologist, I believe strongly in our common humanity. We can rise above the tribal divisions that have caused so much anguish and real damage in the past. The real hallmarks of humanity are curiosity and amazing ability to cooperate. If we can use science wisely and work together, I believe we can overcome the huge challenges facing us this century." Now that's a quote. If I could fit that in a bumper sticker, I would.
There's not many people who can disagree with that, I don't think.
Yeah.
We've got to work together as humans. And the one thing we can all agree on is we're humans. Most countries in the world have signed up to the Human Rights Act in some way, shape or form. So we treat each other with some form of respect.
Mm-hmm.
And if we're going to need to use science to face the challenges ahead, and one of the challenges she's obviously talking about there is climate change in the next century.
Mm-hmm.
And if we don't get together, if we don't use science, we won't tackle climate change.
And we'll see more forests burning, like what's happening right now in the ironically named Paradise, California.
Yes.
You can see what's happening before our very eyes, really. And things like climate change denial has just gone and made things worse.
Yeah, and this is all part of humanism. It's believing that we can fix the problems using science. We can gain knowledge through science. There is no knowledge to be passed down by some higher being. We are the masters of our own fate as a species, and the best way to do that is through cooperation and love for your fellow human being.
Yeah, and actually Christianity and other religions do promote that, really. So they are being humanists in a way without perhaps even realizing it.
Yeah, and if they realised that they've got nothing to fear from that, maybe they would be more willing to work with us rather than write articles like the previous one. But if you're wondering if you're a humanist, I've never really heard of the term, just go online, Google "Am I a Humanist?" quiz, and there's a quiz. Nice religious people I know that have taken it, they come out as 90% humanist, because actually most people want to get along with people. Yeah. Most people want to sort out the problems.
It doesn't necessarily mean atheist or God hater either, does it, that term?
No, being an atheist or being a humanist doesn't mean you're a God hater.
As Christians keep telling us, no, it does.
No. Just means we don't believe there's a God. We haven't seen any evidence there's a God. That's all it means.
Humanism just means belief in the power of humanity and what we can do.
And the golden rule, treat people how you want to be treated.
Yeah, exactly. And I think we're going to go out into the world now and do exactly that, as we always try to do.
Indeed.
And I will see you back here next week.